Hey, podcast family, welcome back to another episode of The Period Party. This week's guest is Kiana Reeves, an extraordinary individual with a diverse background that includes being a somatic sex educator, a certified doula, a pelvic health practitioner, and the chief education officer at Foria, where she channels her passion for sexual wellness and plant-based medicine to drive content and brand education. In fact, Foria is how Kiana and I connected a number of years ago. In our conversation today, we explore how Kiana's journey led her to become an advocate for sexual wellness, reproductive health, and holistic approaches to well-being. We delve into the intersection of her certifications and her work, revealing how her experiences in these fields inform her unique approach to sexual wellness. Kiana is a firm believer that sexual wellness isn't just a part of life. It's a vital aspect of overall well-being at every stage, from menstruation to menopause. She shares insights on how we can embrace aging and maintain a profound connection with our bodies and pleasure as we grow older. Kiana's work isn't just all about theory. She provides practical advice on nurturing personal intimacy and pleasure, regardless of your age or life stage. In our fast-paced world, she offers tips on how to prioritize intimacy in our daily lives and relationships. She shared so many good tips on this episode, by the way. We also dive into the importance of understanding sexual health, both on a personal level and within the context of our partnerships. Kiana discusses the pleasure gap and shares how we can actively work to close it, emphasizing that sexual wellness is about more than just closing the orgasm gap. Her commitment to open dialogue and connecting people with their own sexual experiences is truly remarkable. So get ready for an enlightening conversation that could change the way you view your sexual well-being. If you want to share this episode, tag at Kiana.Reeves and me at Nicole M. Jardim on Instagram and let us know what you thought about the episode. Also, make sure to leave a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. As always, thank you for being here with me every week. I could not do this work without you and your support. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Kiana. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
So excited to catch up with you and chat on all this stuff.
I know. Everyone who's listening, Kiana and I go way back. And then I was reintroduced to her by a PR team, which is so awesome. I'm so happy that we got reconnected again because I feel like this is going to be a very juicy, in many ways, conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Oh, yes. So let's start with your background, because when I met you, you were heading up Foria, which is a company that we will talk about. And it's something that I have shared about so many times in my work. And now you do many things. You're a somatic sex educator, a doula, a pelvic health practitioner. So talk to me about all these modalities. How did this come to be?
Yeah. So when we met, I was already a doula. I had been practicing as a doula for, at that point, the better half of a decade. And then I'm just a lifelong student. You know, I had started my own company that was all about female sexual health, and I was doing jade eggs and yoni steaming and kind of like digging into like more traditional non-Western tools for pelvic health. And it brought me in and deeper into the realm of what sexual wellness really is, which is being able to like fully embody your sexuality and express it. And so that led me to study with like who I think are the best teachers in this field, which is Kimberly Johnson, Ellen Heed, who do incredible. I mean, I think you know Kimberly, but
Yeah.
She wrote the book, The Fourth Trimester, and does so much work on the female nervous system when it comes to sexuality, and her teacher, Ellen. And then I studied with their teachers and certified as a somatic sex educator and sexological bodyworker. And they were phenomenal teachers. And then the last 4 years, I've been studying embodiment and sexual polarity and embodiment with, did I already say that? Embodiment. Yeah. With John Wineland. So I've just
Nice. I've heard of him too. I hear great things.
Yeah. I love this world. It's my world. It's my jam. So yeah.
Well, I am so happy to be having this conversation because I feel like I talk about all kinds of things in this podcast, and rarely do I talk about sexuality and sexual wellness, which is quite ridiculous. So as soon as I saw your name, I was like, I got to have this conversation, and then many more to come. But I feel like everything that you speak about is
it's still weirdly taboo in our society. Like it's
Mhm.
still things, it's just still a topic that we don't talk about. I mean, I just said I don't even have these conversations, or at least rarely on the podcast. So let's talk about just sex being an essential part of well-being. I
Yeah.
would love for you to elaborate on how sexual wellness, which you just defined, fits into the larger wellness conversation at, you know, every stage of life, right? From menstruation to menopause and, you know, everything in between.
Yeah. So if you look at sex as this like fundamental human need, even if we're not having sex with someone else, it's, for me, it's part of the hierarchy of needs. Like once we get our real like safety needs met and, you know, we have food, shelter, and sleep, it's connection. And within that, there's deep, intimate need for love and connection. And while that may not always be sexual, I really think we are biologically wired to touch every parts of our life and be able to heal and connect with every parts of our life through our sexuality. And so to connect with our creativity, to, you know, feel the impact of oxytocin and dopamine that's released when we have incredible lovemaking and connection, to feel our bodies kind of open and soften because we've had a deep sexual experience and it's brought more breath and regulation into our nervous system. And you know, what it does to our blood flow, what it does to our chemical matrix. You know, there's like, we can talk about all of the different layers of it, emotionally, biochemically, relationally, and even socially, like what happens to us when we open up and understand our sexuality a little more. It allows us to embody a part of ourselves that's truly a part of our nature, that, as you spoke to, kind of gets cut off. You know, it's this part of us that everyone longs for and needs, yet we don't really get to talk about it in an open setting, you know?
No, we don't. I
Yeah.
mean, I think about this often because obviously when I have women fill out an intake form, that is one of the questions.
Mhm.
And I would say about 90% of the time, women always say, I mean, they say that they are not having enough sex or they don't feel like they are. They also feel like their libido could
Yeah.
use like a little bit of help to a lot of help. It's so rare now, really, ever, if ever, in the last 10 years that I've seen someone be thrilled with their sex life and their sexuality and their sexual wellness. Can we talk about that? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, modern life is a
Yeah.
real bitch.
Not conducive. Yeah. So
No.
stress is like the number one libido killer. And what's interesting about stress is we don't always register stress as stress, right? Like we might consciously think of specific things as stressful, but what's happening in the body is actually there's a lot more stress than we're perceiving as stress. And so when we have these little micro stressors that layer on, whether they're emotional and relational happening within a relational dynamic, or they're just the day-to-day list of things that we have to take care of, what it does is it's subtly telling and signaling the nervous system that you're not available for connection because you're in a state of activation that's kind of telling you there's a continual low level threat in your field. And the nervous system and the way our biology works is sex gets totally deprioritized when we have low level threat in our system chronically, because it's not a biologically safe place to procreate, essentially. And so from that perspective, it makes sense that our libidos get shut down. But I think something we don't talk enough about in the sex world is how impactful our emotions are on our libido. You know, people think like hormones, like what's happening with testosterone and progesterone and estrogen, and all of those totally play a crucial role. Diet plays a crucial role. All of that is so important. And at the same time, the heart, you can't get away from what's happening in the heart and how your body responds sexually. So if you're looking at your libido and going, well, my libido is not what I want it to be, what's in the way a lot of the times is stuff in the partnership, is stuff in relationship with your own body that's not being tended to, that's kind of piling on top of where you really would be able to access what would be your libido.
Mm. Yeah, because I think about when you're in your teens, 20s,
Yeah.
you're just living your best life.
Yeah. Free.
Totally free.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pretty much talked to all of my friends about this, and they're all in their late 30s, 40s at this point, and everyone's like, sex, what a pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
another thing to check off the list. I've got
Yeah.
small children, I've got partner, parents to deal with, family, so many obligations. One of my friends was showing me her phone the other day, and she's got like 4 different apps for her child's school. It's like, these are the meals, this is the homework. I was just like, wait, what? 4 apps? Like, what? So, I mean, what is a modern woman supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, the fun part about all of this, and this is like what I teach in my work outside of Foria, is we have so much agency over this part of our lives, much more than we actually think we do. And it's akin to our relationship with how we take care of our bodies. So you think about eating consciously or, intentionally exercising to feel good. And we just don't have like a modern, well-defined way of approaching our sexual practice or erotic practices. But outside of masturbation, which is what most people focus on, is like, oh, do you masturbate? Oh, do you self-pleasure? Like, yes, have a pleasure practice. Super important. But one layer deeper than that is like, figure out and find out what turns you on, not just sexually, like what makes you feel alive, because sexual energy is the energy of aliveness. And when your life feels like just filled with to-do lists and things to take care of, you're not tapped into your essential aliveness and your excitement and your dynamic creative energy. And so to take it to go underneath and go like, what brings me pleasure deeply? What makes me feel like, oh my God, I'm so fucking excited? What makes me want to dance around in my living room and like turn up the music loud and be spontaneous? And when you start paying attention to those threads in your life, what you actually do is you're filling the fountain, or you're tapping into the well that is your erotic energy, and you'll have so much more access to it then throughout the day. And then you layer on the physical practices. So having a practice every day where you intentionally connect to your sensuality could just be touching your body for 5 minutes in a way that makes you feel like really, really good and held. Or it could be a solo sexual practice where you bring in, some beautiful oils or hands or tools, and you feel your body as it exists in its own erotic space without demand, from your partner, or the internalized demands that you have to have sex. And when you start to do that, similar to if you have a yoga practice, it becomes embedded into your life, and it helps you connect with that part of you in a really true and deep way, so that it doesn't have this split that we live in now, which is either that I'm super connected to it or I don't feel it at all. And it's more of like a threading in between.
Mm. Yeah, I think that those are all so helpful, and really, for so many women, nobody's doing that, right? I just feel like everyone's just sort of rushing from one thing to the next, and it takes so much time and effort to just slow down and actually feel their feelings, feel how they feel physically, all of it. I think so much of my work is that too, asking women to do that, to literally just feel your feelings. And it got me thinking about postpartum, and that was something that has come up. I don't have kids, but like all of my friends do, and that's been something that has been such a challenge for so many of them, right? You're literally what feels like in survival mode for a good period of time. And I just wonder, do you feel like there are times in life when we have ebbs and flows, or there's like slumps,
Absolutely.
and there's just like times where we're really sexually active, I suppose you could say, or just super turned on, and then other times where we're like, oh gosh, I just need to get through this day?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I had one last night.
Like
I have a pretty good barometer now where I'm like, oh, when I don't feel my libido and my sex drive, it's because I'm overwhelmed. Like that's the number one thing. But if I don't know how to notice that in my own body, then how I perceive it is I'm totally not turned on and like have like my libido is like not available right now. And so what you're pointing to is the times in life when it ebbs, as it naturally does. It's a current, and it's going to do that, you know, in daily cycles and hourly cycles and monthly cycles, and also in these bigger cycles that are like postpartum, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, menstrual cycle, etc. Is that with the hormonal fluctuation, you'll have different needs. And so, for example, if we took postpartum and we understand that it's a time where there's a lot of external expectations for care, not even expectations, like requirements that, you know, you just are constantly having to put your awareness outside your body, outside your needs, and care for others. Your needs change. You probably need a lot more alone time to find yourself again, to find the boundary of your body, to feel like you're in your body and able to touch base with what's actually going on for you. And the way you access desire might be totally different. It might not be that spontaneous, hot, fiery thing that you're used to feeling. It might be that you need full body, you know, 20, 40-minute just stroking and touch to even feel ready and open for any kind of intimacy. And that, I think if we normalize that our our sex drive doesn't mean we have to have sex. Like touching your eroticism and having intimate connection with yourself or a partner doesn't need to be this goal-driven, orgasm-focused, penetrative, heteronormative intercourse game, but that it can be like, let's just spend an hour naked together, feeling in the moment what's right, you know, and maybe I do touch your cock for a little bit, and maybe you do like rub my thighs, and, you know, but we're in this dance of expression together where we're finding what feels good then and what feels true then. And it relieves the pressure that some people feel like, oh no, my partner is starting to kiss me. Like, I'm not ready for sex. And so we cut it off at the very beginning without asking the question, like, where else could this take us?
That is so good. It's so funny. I mean, I feel like I have totally lived this scenario so many times where I'm like,
we all.
I'm not even gonna go there because
Yeah,
I just don't want to deal with the whole thing.
exactly.
And yeah, and because it actually had me thinking right before you started talking about this, the expectations of what it's supposed to look like. And we have these, as you said, very specific expectations that are, I don't know, is it just a societal thing, the societal depiction of sex and what it is? And so, yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Is there anything more to share around that? Because I think that this is the biggest issue. We're just like, we don't want to go the whole way.
Totally. I'm going to go back to this yoga metaphor. It's like, okay, pretend you had only ever seen yoga on TV or had a gym teacher teach you like 5 postures. And then for the rest of your life, you were expected to know how to do yoga. And you were very limited in your language, understanding, and depth of practice about it. You'd be like, cool, I'm in downward dog again. This is great. You know, it's like, it's the same thing. We didn't get good sex education. We basically got told abstinence, or here's how to put on a condom, avoid STDs, have fun. And here's what sex is. There's a little bit of, maybe they talked about oral sex. They certainly didn't talk about hands. They maybe touched on consent, but it wasn't embodied consent. There was no focus on pleasure. And you're an effing teenager. You don't even know how to tell what's going on in your body. And those are the habits that our entire sex lives are built on, is blind exploration, which leads you into great places, of course, but without a language, like, yeah, we're just looking at movies and TV and porn, and then trying to replicate that in our own lives. And it is stupid that we have these expectations that we're going to have these beautiful big sex lives without putting in effort to really like get uncomfortable and kind of unwind all of that. And so, yeah, we don't have, like, what I want for couples most is to be able to have a language of curiosity with each other, and to have so much permission for each other's shared desires and needs in that moment. in such a way that neither person takes them personally, and that both can be like, oh, I'm such a yes to that need for you, and I'm such a yes to your, no breast touch, but like you want me to make out with you for 15 minutes, but like your nipples hate it, or so we don't touch your breast. Whatever it is like being able to find each other's yeses and nos together in flow is really what makes for great sex.
So beautiful. I feel like you're giving everyone permission to just do what it is they actually want to do, versus the feeling that they have to do something specific. This also brings up something else too. I was thinking about when we were talking about sex drives and libidos, and this idea that these exist on a spectrum, right? There's got to be some continuum. I have a friend who she has a higher sex drive than her husband, and so this has been a challenge for them. And obviously I know lots of men with higher sex drives than their partners or their wives, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, first of all, how do you know whether you have a good sex drive or not? I mean, I think that's something that makes a lot of women feel really inadequate.
Yeah, so good is entirely subjective,
right?
And it's about what would feel good for you in your ideal world. For some people, that's going to be every day. For some people, it's going to be once or twice a month. For some people, it might be 2-3 times a week. And then it's also moment to moment, right? Like what feels good for you in the moment. I have days where I want to have sex every day, multiple times a day. And then I have weeks where I don't want to have sex at all. And like to normalize that continuum, to know that the libido is always changing, that's great permission to be with what is and to work with what is, and not have something hanging over your head that you either have a high sex drive or a low sex drive. It's always in flux, just like your hormones. Now, couples, I think the most common issue for couples around sex is a mismatched libido. And libido is this huge umbrella term for looking at things like, not just like it's your sex drive, but what goes into your sex drive is hormones. It's societal upbringing and conditioning. It's how you feel about your body and how embodied you are. It's what's happening in your nervous system. It's what's happening relationally with your partner. It's how in tune you are with your desires and your own sexuality. So, and there's many more factors. So like just that alone, you can see, like you pull one thread and you could investigate hormones for a long time. You could pull another thing, go like, what's happening in our relationship that we don't have any attraction or chemistry, or something's like not really clicking between us. Pull another thread and, look at like what happened when you were younger in your relationship with sex that you internalized the shame. And so now have a really hard time accessing this part of yourself. So it doesn't answer the question or give a solution other than tug on any one of those threads and you'll start to see like why mismatched libidos is really common. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's super helpful though to just hear that this exists on a spectrum, and this is not something that you have based on some standard. It's so individualized. And yes, I agree. I feel like the whole exploring the mismatched libido thing is, I guess, an entirely other conversation. Something you also mentioned a little while ago was porn. And I'm trying to think who I had this conversation with recently about this. Oh yeah, it was just a person who was in one of my programs, and we were talking through the unbelievable impact that has had on our society in the last like 15-20 years since the internet came about. I'm just curious. I know that again is probably a whole conversation in and of itself, but do you have any thoughts on if someone is using it too much, or, and they're dependent on it, or it's like changed the way that they respond in like a regular sexual situation with a partner, anything like that?
Yeah. So porn has the potential to be addictive, which is why it's challenging. And I know a lot of people who have faced some really hard things with their partners who have been addicted to masturbating to porn and then unable to kind of be present in their real life 3-dimensional sexual dynamic. And that's because what happens with porn, especially with the dopamine response, when you're kind of like upping the ante every time, right? Like to get a dopamine response that's big that you can feel, you kind of have to bring even more excitement into the mix, more thrill. And with porn, if you're masturbating to it over and over and over again and getting this really addiction, just like it's same with poker or gambling, you need to take bigger and bigger risks. And so then what happens is when your real life sex life isn't mirroring that thrill, you're not going to be able to have the same sexual response or desire. And so that can be the challenge. That said, porn is this interesting place to explore, and how you use it can either have really negative impacts or can help you open and be beneficial and open to new things. But it has to be done consciously, right? You're not going to be like, I'm going on a diet and I'm going to take care of my body and I'm going to explore this part of myself and I'm going to eat McDonald's every day. You're actually going to look for porn that's educational, that depicts real life connection, that is, there's directors in this space now that are doing really cool, I would call them like holistic approaches to porn, where you can learn from them and you can touch into your own desires and be like, ooh, that looks really cool. That's something that's thrilling to me. And as long as you're bringing it into your life in a conscious and intentional way, where you don't, I think the thing is, like, don't leave your body, right? Don't just be so in your mind that you're only in fantasy and you're trying to get off super, super fast and you're not even tracking sensation. It's like, be with the porn, breathe it through your body, really track sensation in your body, bring your partner into it if they're open to it, and like, let it be integrated in a way that it doesn't become divisive, but that it really becomes a tool of exploration.
That's really great advice. And coming back to what we talked about with, our busy lives and just the challenges of navigating that, what do you suggest for people who really do want to prioritize their sexual wellness, their intimacy? Do you have anything else aside from what you had shared earlier that people can do in their day-to-day routines or in their relationships in general?
Yeah, I do. My preferred way to approach my own sexuality and my own eroticism is through the lens of the body, like really accessing what's present in the body, and being with it emotionally, because we're such emotional creatures, particularly women and people with, the matrix of female hormones, primarily female hormones. So what I like to do is half an hour a day, if possible. Sometimes it's way too hard for people. 10 minutes a day, get in your underwear, find a private space, and touch pleasure in your own body. And the way that I like to do this is come through what's true in the heart in the moment, like really what's the biggest emotion that's present, and then use embodiment tools like breath, sound, and movement to just feel it. And sometimes like a pleasure practice in this sense, as long as you're feeling good, right? You're like, okay, my body's feeling good, but I'm going to feel, God, that sadness that's here today, and I can be in pleasure and feel grief. That duality allows us to have so much more availability for expression in our sex lives. And it helps make space for connection, because we're not like, I'm stressed and I'm sad and I'm mad and I'm holding resentment and I'm full. It actually gives the body a space to clear and move what comes up every day, what comes through every day, so that we really are available in the present moment. And that's where I start. And then with couples, something my partner and I have done that I've found to be really fun and a great way for there not to be pressure on either person, especially if there's like what we were talking about, a difference in libido, is set 1 or 2 nights a week where you have intentional sexual connection. And if you're wanting to bring in exploration into the dynamic, which is another piece where sex goes to die, is like when it's just the same every time.
Yeah.
It's like nobody wants to live their life that way. We put a jar together where we spent one night, we like made all of these agreements. Okay, this is our night together. We're going to spend at least an hour, if not two, exploring together. And he put in a huge list and I put in a huge list, and we tore them up and we put it in the jar, and then we take turns picking them out. And what's cool about this practice is that no one has to be the lead. No one has to in that moment be like, okay, well, do you want to like role play with me? Or, are you up for it? It's like, no, we've actually already agreed to this. And whether you're tired or I'm tired, we're doing it. And so there is this endurance, leaning in agreement that allows for you to stretch those kind of yoga muscles a little bit, where you're like, okay, I don't want to do yoga, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to find my joy in it. And what happens is this great kind of unfolding where you're not forcing yourself into something, rather you're opening to your commitment to step into that space. And we've had some of the most insanely beautiful sexual experiences come out of that, because we're just like, man, we're tired, but we're going to lean in all the way in, and yeah, that I think is one of my favorite practices for couples, because you have a safe space to explore desire and fantasy and have fun together.
I love that so much. I feel like everything you're talking about is just so practical and so real. Sometimes it can just feel really overwhelming for anyone who's, they've already gotten to the point where they haven't had sex with their partner in whatever, like 3 months. And they're just like, where do I start?
Where do I start?
And there is really something to that though, when it's been multiple months and you feel so frazzled, you don't even know what's going on in that other person's head. And how do you even bridge that gap? Like, how do you even start to come back together?
Yeah. So many people go through like really lengthy periods of no connection.
Yeah.
Sometimes years of no connection. And the buildup then becomes so much that it's really hard to find each other again. And I think, again, like everything we're talking about today is like, how do you take the pressure off? Like, how do you start dating again? How do you just be with like what is again? Because it's the pressure that actually is in the way. It's the expectation that's in the way. It's the pain and the hurt of the disconnection that's in the way. So to be present in the moment as it exists together and just accept it is the first place to start. And then when I work with couples, one of the things that I really find so valuable is just presence and eye contact. And this is like foundational tantra, but sitting in front of each other and breathing. I'll give couples a practice to do like 3 to 5 minutes, put a timer on so you're not in the, overwhelm of like, oh, is this going to last forever? And you just sit in front of each other, can do it before bedtime, look into each other's eyes and breathe. And let what's, again, this idea of like what's true in your heart be revealed through your eyes for both partners. And you might find tears or you might find laughter. A lot of people laugh because they've never had eye contact for that long, and it's incredibly intimate and vulnerable. And after doing that for a minute, it's like, okay, you're a human. I'm a human. We've been doing a lot, but not being a lot, and from that place, you can start to like hold hands or find playfulness together. And it takes a little bit of that, the pressure out.
Okay, I could cry. That is just so beautiful. It really is. You're a human and I'm a human and we're just here doing this thing. And I think that that's what it comes back to. And we lose that. It's unbelievable when I think about it. I mean, like when Hayden and I were in a long distance relationship, and if we were gone too long, that was it. We were like fighting, we're breaking up. It's a disaster. Do you see that, where if it's just, there's a threshold, and I think it obviously varies from couple to couple, but for us, if it's like 2 months, we're in big trouble. And
if there's lack of connection for too long, what it's going to do to someone's nervous system is signal massive threat. And so then all of your childhood patterns come up of like, how did you deal with threat in your family dynamic? And it's usually 1 or 3 or 4 responses. You fight, you run, or you freeze, or you do all 3, or you pretend nothing's wrong and you
Ignore it.
Sweep it under the rug. And so you can go back to your like early childhood familial patterns and go like, what did I do when X happened in my family? Like for me, what did I do when there was like major conflict or rupture with one of my parents? I ran or I fought them really hard. And to have compassion in our relationships, knowing that they are simply a deep reflection of our early nervous system patterning, really like, again, allows us to be compassionate with our responses, which feel really real. It's like, oh my God, we're breaking up. This relationship is ending. I had this like 3 weeks ago when my partner went to Burning Man and got stuck there. And
In the mud?
yeah, and he was like, fine. And I knew it was irrational, but I was like, why aren't you crawling on your hands and knees to get out of there to get to me? You know, and he was like, I'm just gonna like have a good time here and be fine. And he was like thinking about me and having, you know, like, but he got home and I was mad. And I was like, I'm not mad now, but like there's a part of me that is, my threat response was so lit up that I was legit crazy for a week. And it was hard. I thought all of the worst thoughts, because that's what happened when we are in like big activation nervous system wise, everything's going to feel, you're going to see it through a particular lens, and it won't necessarily be congruent with reality, the whatever reality is, you know. It's very emotional response where you get hijacked. And so the trick is learning that you're hijacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so guilty of this. As you're saying it all, I'm just thinking, all the irrational responses I've had over the years.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. You poor thing. I mean,
but
I can imagine that but it's like helpful to hear even the experts who have really done the exploration and the work still go through this shit.
Oh, it's brutal. Yeah. It's brutal. And the piece that one of my teachers always talks about is, you know, John likes to like reiterate this over and over again, but it's like, trust the feeling, but let the thoughts go. So like we automatically, if there's a feeling in our bodies, like sadness or fear or jealousy or any of it, we automatically start to make meaning out of them. And we conflate the two things to think that our jealousy means X, Y, and Z is happening, or that our sadness means we're breaking up, or that our anger means X, Y, and Z. And it's in the meaning making that that's where we get into trouble, is like trying to take action or believing our thoughts. When actually what needs to be felt and with, like for us to be with, is the feeling of like, I feel really jealous and really scared. And I have no idea why, but like, it's crushing me. You know, I've been hurt before. Like I've been cheated on before, like the very like human reality of heartbreak that you've carried in your life. And it doesn't make it go away. Like we want the feeling to go away because feelings are intense and hard, but it does make them easier to be with when you're just with them and you're not paying attention and buying into all the thoughts you're having.
Buying into all the thoughts you're having.
Yeah.
Note to self.
Yeah.
For future reference.
Yeah.
It's just so helpful. It's truly, I hope everyone listening is really feeling that, because I think that it is so universal, those feelings.
Yeah, totally.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit because I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I wanted to talk about the pleasure gap and the orgasm gap. Can you elaborate on what those are for everyone?
So the pleasure gap and the orgasm gap are statistically significant differences in the way people experience pleasure, and mostly orgasm. A lot of these studies are around orgasm, and it's looking across the spectrum of heterosexual and queer relationships and who's having orgasms the most. And surprise, surprise, heterosexual men in relationships have the most, and heterosexual women in heterosexual relationships have the least amount of orgasms. So that is the largest gap we have. And what's interesting is, because I don't have the stats offhand, but what's interesting is like, typically those women who are having the least amount of orgasms in their partner dynamics are able to reach orgasm 95% of the time with themselves. So it's not, the issue is within the understanding of how our bodies work. Yeah.
As in,
and that's something,
the man's understanding of how the females work, body
and also,
works.
and also
Right.
the women's understanding of how our bodies work and how we communicate that to our partner in our needs. You know, like we're so complicit unintentionally in stepping on and burying our own pleasure in service to our partner's pleasure, or just because we don't know how to access it in ourselves. But that's something we do a lot of work on in Foria, is like our whole intimacy line is inspired and designed to support female arousal, because people don't know how different it is to really, so like female arousal, when someone is very aroused as a female, our entire genitals need the same amount of blood flow that a penis needs. That's a lot of blood, but it doesn't happen within 1 to 3 minutes. It doesn't happen like an erection. I mean, we do get erections, but it doesn't happen like a light switch.
Right.
It happens over time, and it happens not necessarily like slowly, but slower in relation. And so to understand that and to help people go like, cool, if I want more pleasure, arousal is what I need to be tracking. Are my labia engorged and swollen, 3 times the size that they usually are? Is my clitoris swollen and actually like much bigger than it was when I was, initiated this experience? Am I starting to feel flushed and excited and desiring of penetration? Like those kinds of conversations to have with couples are the ones that allow for pleasure to happen much more frequently down the line.
Yeah. All right. We're all about it. Closing it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd want to share? I know, obviously, I've mentioned in your bio that you're part of Foria, and this is an incredible company, and the work that you do is just so, so important. I don't know if there's anything you want to share around that and that kind of work that you do as well.
Yeah. The thing so I've been with the brand for 6 years and helped grow the brand from like a little sweet, beautiful baby brand to what we are now. And what we've expanded into since those early years is like not just female pleasure, but we have a real focus on the full spectrum of the female lifespan. So sex and pleasure, yes, full line devoted to that. And then we looked at menstruation and we thought, why the hell is nobody talking about cramps and supporting cramps? And like, why is our only option Midol and Tylenol? And like, what's going on in the world of PMS, and like, how can we support people through those experiences? So we have a beautiful relief line that's really devoted to the menstrual cycle. And then we have something that I can't talk about, but it's coming, and it's a whole other phase of life that's really important, super underserved, and have a few fun things coming out soon. So keep your eyes out.
Okay, we will. So exciting. Yeah. I just want to thank you so much. I feel like this was such a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate all of your knowledge and everything you've shared. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you. So fun.
Absolutely. Can you just tell everyone, this will be in the show notes as well, of course, but can you tell everyone where they can find you, your work, and of course, Foria as well?
Yes. So easiest way to find me, I have a website, kianareeves.com, KIANA. Instagram's where I do a lot of my like fun front-facing little bite-sized education, and that's at kiana.reeves. And then Foria, I'm chief education officer there. So I lead all of our blog content, all of our social content. I do lots of Q&As on our social there too. So if someone wants to ask me a question, they can send it in through our DMs. And that's at Foria Wellness on Instagram. And then our website is foriawellness.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kiana. This is amazing.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
That's a wrap. Be sure to click that subscribe button to join me for more Girl Talk Gone Menstrual in upcoming episodes. But in the meantime, check out my latest Period Party episode. And if you're looking for a deeper dive into your hormones, go ahead and take my period quiz at NicoleJardim.com/quiz.